Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt. My name is Bodie, and I am your host, and I am rocking my morning allergy voice. I just took an allergy pill, so hopefully this gets better over time. Have a couple of quick announcements for you. Last episode, I talked about putting 3 ad spots in any podcast that's over 20 minutes long. I do think I need to clarify something on this. Just because I put an ad spot in doesn't mean there'll actually be an ad in that spot. I pretty much listen back to every single podcast that I do from the Acast feed, and sometimes I don't hear any ads on this podcast at all. So it doesn't mean that this podcast is going to get flooded with ads all of a sudden. It just means there's a spot there for an ad to be placed if someone buys an ad on the show, or if they place an ad on the show, because it's all programmatic ads. I hope that's helpful, because I did have some questions on that. Next up, my other podcast, Shuffle Playlist. We have a new episode out, and we cover Spinning Jenny and their song Low. Spinning Jenny is an all-female band. Well, it's 3 sisters, and then their dad plays backup guitar. I think they're a really good band. So if you want to learn more about Spinning Jenny, there's a link in the show notes to the Shuffle Playlist podcast. And finally, this episode, we're going to do a mini EV truck roundup. We're going to start off with a little bit of news, and then we're going to compare the Ram 1500 Rev, the F-150 Lightning, and the Silverado EV. We're going to compare those 3 trucks. And while we're talking about specs on those trucks, I just want you to keep in mind that only one of those trucks is actually in production and being sold. So the other 2 trucks are what those auto manufacturers are saying. So the actual product may be a little bit different. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but these auto manufacturers have a habit of promising you the world and then selling you something that's decent, but nowhere near what they promised you. All right, I've already mentioned that out of the 3 EV pickup trucks that we're going to talk about today is the only truck in production. So let's just recap how that's going for Ford at the moment. Ford has lost billions of dollars in their EV division. We've talked about this over the last couple of weeks. We've heard Ford say it in their earnings calls. And then last week, we talked about the Ford Blue Oval event, where the CFO and the CEO got on TV and they talked about how complex and expensive the EV lineup is to manufacture and how complex their vehicle architectures are. And despite the fact that Ford has 2 really good selling products, the F-150 Lightning and the Ford Mach-E, they're losing billions of dollars. Well, Ford announced that they're planning on a big reduction in complexity with the start of the 2024 model year, which is likely to come out in 2023, because that's how it usually works. They come out in the fall. So only bring this up to really illustrate how hard it is, even for an auto manufacturer that's been around for 100 years, to produce something new like an EV. All right, now that we've got that established, we do have some good news from Ford. Ford has announced that all of its electric vehicles are eligible for the Inflation Reduction Act tax credit here in the United States, the EV tax credit. This includes the F-150 Lightning, the Mustang Mach-E, and the E-Transit commercial van. It also includes their hybrid vehicles, but we don't talk about hybrid vehicles on this show, so I'm not going to mention those. Of the 3 vehicles that I mentioned, the Lightning, the Mach-E, and their commercial van, only one of them is eligible for the full $7,500 incentive. And here's how it breaks down. The F-150 Lightning, as long as the vehicle's under $80,000, will qualify for the full $7,500 incentive. The Mustang Mach-E at $3,750, and the Ford Transit van will also get $3,750. Now, if you're like, man, I was going to buy one of those cars this week, well, you're in luck. If you take delivery of any electric vehicle that qualifies for the Inflation Reduction Act before April 18th, you'll still receive the full $7,500 incentive. After April 18th, those incentives are going to be cut in half, at least for some vehicles. So that's good news for Ford customers. Now some bad news for Ford, or maybe not bad news, some news to motivate them. Let's call it that. Despite Ford's goal to triple F-150 Lightning and double Mach-E production, they recently lost their title as the number 2 EV maker in the United States to General Motors. In Q1 2023, Ford sold 10,866 electric vehicles, with Mustang Mach-E sales falling 19% to 5,407. And the decrease was due to production shutdowns. And one of the things that I immediately thought of when I read this story was that Tesla just decreased the prices on their Model Y and Model 3, which are in that same price range that the Mach-E has. And the range on the Model Y and the Model 3 are better at those prices than what Ford is selling the Mach-E for. And, Model Y and Model 3 are still really good cars. Not that the Mach-E is not. But would you spend, let's say $45,000 on a Mach-E to get 240 miles range, or would you spend $42,000 on a Model 3 and get 276 miles range? Just something to think about. Let me know what you think. Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. We have one more Ford story. Ford has introduced an all-new AI-based technology called Ford Pro Trailer Hitch Assist for the F-150 Lightning pickup truck. The Trailer Hitch Assist from Ford Pro uses machine learning and computer vision to automate the process of backing up to a trailer. The system uses the rear camera and corner radius to align the truck's hitch to the trailer, while also controlling the truck's speed, steering, and braking at the same time. The system has ultrasonic sensors that will alert the driver if an obstacle gets in the way, so we don't have any crushing or smashing injuries. The Pro Trailer Hitch Assist system, which is terribly named, was developed in-house with over 60 patents, and Ford says it'll get better over time with Ford Power-Up software updates. All right, let's shift gears a little bit to Stellantis. Stellantis is in talks with Panasonic to purchase round cylindrical battery cells for their battery packs. To this point, Stellantis has primarily used prismatic cells in the past for their vehicles because they're cheaper and easier to manufacture, but the cylindrical cells are smaller and more energy dense and relatively safe, but they cost more. So if this is like an EV truck roundup, why are we talking about Stellantis and battery packs? Well, Ram is a part of Stellantis Group, and the Ram 1500 Rev is our next topic. The 2025 Ram Rev was recently revealed at the New York Auto Show. The Rev has a pair of electric motors with standard all-wheel drive, offering a total output of 654 horsepower or 620 pound-feet of torque. And 620 pound-feet of torque. The truck comes with independent suspension on all four corners, and air suspension is standard. That's really cool. The Ram uses the new STLA frame, which is wider to accommodate battery packs. So presumably the Ram Rev will be a little bit wider than the ICE version of the Ram 1500. Ram will offer battery packs in two different sizes, and the larger battery pack will give you a range of up to 500 miles. The Rev also has an 800-volt system that can take advantage of 350 kilowatt chargers, which means you'll get 110 miles of range in about 10 minutes. The truck's going to feature bidirectional charging, which in this case means vehicle to vehicle, vehicle to home, vehicle to grid. And of course, there'll be outlets around the truck if you're needing that, if you're out camping or if you are working on a job site. You know why you would need electrical outlets on a truck. I'm not going to go over all that stuff. We also have some autonomous vehicle features. It can drive and park itself with the help of sensors like radar and camera. The new Uconnect 5 system has a large touchscreen display with lots of connected features, according to this article. There's a HUD display that shows information like lane departure, speed, navigation. Digital gauge cluster shows information about the battery and charge and driving modes. And there'll be a Ram Rev app that will do all the things that you would think a Ram Rev app would do. The Rev can tow up to 14,000 pounds with a trailer or haul 2,700 pounds of cargo in the bed. It doesn't sound like Ram has a location picked out yet for manufacturing the Ram 1500 Rev. Illinois would like Ram to build that vehicle at their Belvidere plant because Stellantis idled that plant in February of 2023, which I think would be cool. Carlos Tavares, Stellantis' CEO, said that they would make an announcement on the manufacturing location soon, and it will be in the United States. All right, let's jump into our EV comparison. How does the Ram 1500 compare to the Silverado and compare to the F-150 Lightning? How do they compare to each other? Let's jump into this. The Ram has one powertrain option with 2 electric motors at the moment. This, like we talked about before, will give them 654 horsepower and 620 pound-feet of torque. The Silverado starts with 510 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque. The F-150 starts at 452 horsepower and 775 pound-feet of torque. And the reason why I'm saying starts with is because the F-150 Lightning and the Ford, they also have upgraded motor options that have more torque and more horsepower. The Silverado has a top end of 754 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque. The F-150 has 580 horsepower and 775 pound-feet of torque. And if you're interested, the GMC Sierra EV has about the same as the Silverado because they're made by the same company or, under the GM brand. And if you're like, wow, the Ram 1500 Rev and the Silverado have way better specs than the F-150 Lightning, that goes back to, that's because the Silverado and the F-150 and the Ram Rev aren't out yet. So we don't know what the final production specs are going to be. We just know what they've told us. So that's where that comes into play. All 3 of these trucks are available with locking rear differentials, and they have dual motor and all-wheel drive. So let's get to the battery range and towing. Ram has 2 battery options, as we mentioned before, 168 kilowatt hours and 229 kilowatt hours. I can't imagine what that costs for a 229 kilowatt hour battery. The 168 kilowatt hour battery has a range of 350 miles. The 229 kilowatt hour battery, like we talked about before, has a range of up to 500 miles. We talked about the Ram's 800 volt battery charging system, which allows 350 kilowatts of charging. The F-150 has a base battery of 98 kilowatt hours and a range of around 230 miles. The optional 131 kilowatt hour battery pack gives it a range between 300 and 330 miles, and the F-150 Lightning allows for 150 kilowatt charging max. Let's get to the Silverado. Right now, the Silverado EV only has one battery option at launch, which will provide around 400 miles of range. GM didn't give us an exact number on their battery pack, how big it is, but it's going to be between, Ram's 168 kilowatt hours and 229 kilowatt hour battery pack. It's safe to assume that. Chevy will offer a smaller battery pack later, but like I said, that launch vehicle is about, I think it's $109,000 or $104,000, something around there. The Silverado can also take advantage of that 350 kilowatt fast charging. Next up, we have payload, towing, and frunk capacity. The Ram has the highest payload at 2,700 pounds and towing capacity at 14,000 pounds. The F-150 has a payload capacity of 2,000 pounds with a towing capacity of 10,000 pounds. The Silverado has a payload capacity of 1,300 pounds and a towing capacity of 10,000 pounds. Chevy plans to introduce a version of the Silverado capable of 20,000 pounds of towing, but I also plan on being a millionaire, so, it can happen. If you're curious about the GMC's Sierra EV, it tops out at 10,000 pounds of towing, 9,500 actually. Let's talk about frunks. I love me a frunk. The Ram has the biggest frunk at 15.7 cubic feet. The F-150 comes in second with 14.1 cubic feet. And the Silverado has a frunk of 10.7 cubic feet. Honestly, the Silverado one in the pictures looked a lot bigger to me. I thought the Silverado had a bigger frunk than the F-150 Lightning based on the pictures that I saw. I was wrong. And finally, what other interesting features do these electric trucks have? They all have independent suspension, hands-free driving assist. They all have onboard power with a different number of outlets. Ram has the Ram box bedside bins that are lockable and watertight with 115 volt outlets. They also have a third infotainment screen in front of the passenger, so I think that's pretty cool. Honestly, I'm not sure if I like the interior of the Dodge or not. It feels very busy when I look at pictures. It might look better in person, but it feels very busy. Chevy has a midgate that folds down, extending the bed area into the cab. And it has that rear tailgate with an integrated fold down step. You can also use that. You can use that step to step up into the back of the truck to help give you a little extra boost. The Chevy also has a 4-wheel steering and crab walk mode, which it got from the Hummer. I would not expect to see this on the more affordable versions of this truck, only on the higher end versions. Let's see here. Ford has a nifty fold down shifter. So Chris Ashley, who was on the show last year, and hopefully I'll try and get him on again here soon. I haven't reached out yet, but I'm going to. When he pushes a button and the shifter just folds down and gets completely out of the way, it's really, really cool. And that provides a work surface if you want to put a laptop there or whatever. I don't know. For whatever reason, that video that he sent tickled me. Is cool. Ford also has a trailering application that helps provide helpful information and calculate load and weight positioning, which is pretty important when you are carrying a heavy load. So that's cool. And we talked about the automatic hitch assist earlier in the show. Honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these trucks. It's just a matter of finding which truck works best for you in the price range you can afford. And then also, what Ram and Chevy actually put out there in the market is important, because there's a really good chance that they're going to fall short of their announced specs. And I'm not rooting for that to happen. I'm just saying that's a reality and a possibility. All right, everybody, that is it for me this episode. I mentioned last week we're going to have 3 episodes this week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That is because we have a lot of EV news that I would like to talk about. I'm committed to doing a twice-a-week show. I am not committed to doing a 3 times a week show. That is a lot more work. But I did hear your feedback of breaking these shows down into smaller, more manageable pieces and not going quite so long is easier for you to listen to them and makes it more entertaining because you don't have to hear me droning on and on and on for long periods of time. So I'm trying to keep these episodes short and light. However, there's going to be episodes that we go close to an hour. There's going to be episodes that we get, 30 minutes, that kind of thing. Let's see here. Please go and listen to my other podcast, Shuffle Playlist. I'm really proud of it. It's a lot of fun. I'm getting some positive feedback from listeners who listen to this show and people who don't. So that's cool. It's good. It's good feeling for the ego. Let's see. I think that's it for us, folks. I don't have anything else to tell you. You can email me, Bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.com. You can find me on Twitter at 918digital. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And I will talk to you on Wednesday.